Tonight on the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are going to continue our rewatch of Star Trek Discovery with episode 103, Context is for Kings. All that right after this. Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
And I'm David C. Robertson.
Hey, David. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, you know, strikes and gutters, man. Strikes and gutters.
Good. Yeah, man. So, we just watched Star Trek Discovery Episode 3. Well, read us that summary of the episode there, Dave.
As per Memory Alpha, Michael Burnham finds herself aboard the USS Discovery, where she quickly realizes things are not as they seem, including the mysterious Captain Gabriel Lorca.
Full spoiler alert, because we're just going to dive right in.
Yeah.
I love this episode.
I do too.
I love it.
I think it's fantastic.
Especially on a rewatch. I don't want to dig way too much into how it compares the first watch, but I feel like we did that a lot last week. But this really, to me, was what the pilot of the show should have been. Mm-hmm. And I just love it.
Well, there is some disagreement amongst the producers and the writers about whether or not this was actually the pilot versus the pilot being a prologue. But, yeah.
Right.
I agree with you.
I almost feel like that, yeah, as I've said before, I feel like that first episode should have been either chopped up and fed to us over the course of the season, or it could have been the Battle of the Binary Stars could have been this thing we heard about for 3 seasons, and then we finally get to see it, and see what she really did. I'm fine with this. Just she's a prisoner. But what that did make me care more about.
I agree. I was about to say, I'm not sure I would have agreed, or I would have thought that her story was nearly as interesting.
Right. The moment that blew me away this episode, and it's purely based on the Michael Burnham character. So Michael Burnham is a character who, the more and more I've been thinking about that first episode, this last few weeks, since we've been doing this rewatch, the more I think about her character, she is a character who had this visceral response to the Klingons because her family was killed by Klingons. Mm-hmm. That's her emotions. Then she's trained in logic. And then she thinks she has reached a point in her life because she then goes on to be taught by Georgiou. And Payne is her teacher, then Sarek is her teacher, then Georgiou is her teacher. She thinks she's ready for command, not just of a starship, but just command of herself. And she makes a decision to try to execute the Vulcan hello through mutiny. Because in that moment, as she says, her emotions inform her logic. All of her emotions scream, Klingons bad, we need to fight the Klingons. Right. All of her logic screams... We've talked a lot on this show about how logic and emotions often conflict. And that's a lot about what Star Trek is about. This show is actually about a moment where logic and emotions get her to a place, the same place, and she makes a bad decision. And that's what I love, is that she thinks she is ready for command. She thinks she's firing on all cylinders. She's got her emotion informing her logic controlling her emotion. She thinks she's this fully formed human being, and then she makes a decision that she regrets horribly and that ruins her life and arguably plunges the Federation into war. Mm-hmm. I still feel like they don't really make that case well. Her mutiny has nothing to do with the war, because her mutiny didn't do it. But she does kill T'Kuvma at the end in what seemed like an emotional moment. But that neither here nor there. Her mutiny is what's kind of ruined her life. And so, like, I love that she is this person who thinks she's doing everything right. Her logic and her emotions lead her to the same conclusion. She totally thinks she's there, and then she's proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Then, the moment in this episode that really brought weight for me was when Captain Lorca tells her she was right.
Mm-hmm.
He tells her, you're the kind of soldier we need right now. You're the kind of person we need if we're going to win this war, is a person who can look past the personal and make the decision that's right. And so, like, she's been doing nothing but all this negative fallout from her decision, and then she has this person that suddenly comes alongside her and tells her maybe her decision wasn't wrong at all. And it's like, in that moment, she's back to being the person that... at least she has one person that's looking at her the way that she looked at herself before. And I think that's super powerful. And it makes the Lorca and Burnham relationship going forward way more interesting for me.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned a few weeks ago or whenever it was that you hated that she broke the Geneva Convention in the first episode, but then
Yes.
brought it up in this one. And rewatching it here, I'm realizing she was basically bringing up how Lorca broke the Geneva Convention as a reasoning point for Lorca's actions towards her and wanting her help as being shady, because he thinks that he can get something out of her because she's capable of it. And that's her, like, making her case that she is Starfleet through and through, even though her mutiny was not, even though her mutiny exists, that's not who she is.
Right. But
so, like, I think it makes a lot more sense.
No, I think that you're totally wrong. It makes it way worse. she is taking her case that's against the Geneva Convention. I would never do something against the Geneva Convention.
No. I think she's saying, I did this. You've done the same thing, and you believe that that means that I'm like you and I'm not. I think that's what she's saying. Exactly.
No, I don't understand how we're getting this backwards. I don't understand how we're disagreeing here, because I think you're completely wrong. He says she thinks he's breaking the Geneva Convention.
Uh-huh.
So she says, you think I'm the kind of person who would do that, but no, I am Starfleet. I made one mistake. You think that I would break the Geneva Conventions like you.
No. She's implying that she knows that she has done this, and he knows that she has done this, but she wants him to know that she knows that he has done it, and that he believes that she has done it, so then that means that she is an ally, but she is not an ally. Like, it's like she's saying, yes, but we both did bad things, but that doesn't inform everything about me. That's not who I am, and I'm not going to keep going down the same path you are.
Yeah, but the thing she's talking about is not the breaking of the Geneva Conventions in the first episode.
No,
the thing that she does in the first episode that breaks the Geneva Conventions is putting bombs on dead bodies.
Right,
it has nothing to do with her mutiny, which is what they're discussing.
I mean,
so I don't see your point at all on that.
Okay, that's fine.
But good try, but it's just a bad flaw.
I mean, I think that's subjective.
I don't think so. She's talking about her mutiny. No one in that episode ever brings up the fact that what they're doing is against the Geneva Convention. She doesn't she doesn't even blink. No one on the ship blinks at the idea. They're all just like, super clever idea, Michael Burnham. Let's break the Geneva Conventions together.
I'm not sure that's true. It's been too long now.
Saru probably pushes back, but it's all about fear. Which I brought up last episode, how the bridge dynamic between Saru and Burnham, if you look at it as the triumvirate with Georgiou in the middle, Georgiou in the Kirk role, it is Saru is all fear, Burnham is all boldness and bravery, which is a weird combination. But now I'm looking at this new dynamic, and you've got Saru even says that Captain Lorca is the kind of man that does things that other captains won't do, or doesn't fear the things that most men do. And so you've kind of got the same dynamic here where you've got Saru is this man of fear and Lorca is a man of without fear, sort of, not to bring Daredevil into it. But wasn't looking for a laugh. You don't have to mock me. I just can't not bring up Daredevil if I say man without fear.
Yeah. Well, a man without hope is a man without fear. That's all I'll say.
Don't know the reference. Is that from a Daredevil?
It's from Frank Miller. Frank Miller's Born Again
Right.
arc.
That's what I figured, because I knew you just read that recently.
Yeah. I mean, I've known the line for a really long time, but yeah, I did read it recently.
Anyway, yeah, there's so it's an interesting bridge dynamic,
Sure.
and kind of a weird one. I don't know how I feel about it.
I feel fine about it.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the characters this episode. We've talked about Burnham, and I feel like her overarching thing is just she's not willing to get involved. She doesn't trust herself anymore, is what it feels like this whole episode. She doesn't trust herself anymore.
But she doesn't trust them even more because she's still willing to break the rules to go check out the mycelial network or whatever it is, the garden or whatever.
Right, but I think it's because she is so Starfleet that she thinks what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
She thinks
She's like, this shit's janky. I gotta go check it out.
Yeah, she thinks they're making a biological weapon, which they're not. As she finds out. I didn't remember that all that came out in the first episode. I love that the whole mycelial network spore drive comes out in the first episode. That was super. I say first episode. This is first episode that features Discovery.
We're not making a weapon. We're making a new way to fly.
Yeah. Oh man, so good.
So good.
So good. What did you think of Tilly?
Tilly annoyed me.
All right.
But that's the way it was the first time. She annoyed me at first, and then I grew to love her. So
I
don't know.
I can see why you'd say she was annoying. I was not annoyed by her. I was charmed by her. I like Tilly a lot.
I did like the way when it went to Black Alert. I did like the way she fetal positioned on the bed and just wouldn't respond to Burnham. I dug that.
Well, from a not knowing what's going on perspective, it was super creepy. Like when she turns over and goes fetal, it's like Burnham's just on this ship and there's just something amiss. Something is weird, and then she's like, "Oh, you weren't briefed? Well, then I can't tell you." And she goes fetal, and it's like the way the camera pans down to her face sitting on the bed. It was straight out of a horror movie, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I did really like Tilly's little mini arc for this episode where she's so worried about her career and so worried about what other people are thinking of her, she's willing to be a complete dick to Michael.
Yeah.
And then her slow realization that oh no, she dope. We good.
Yeah, she makes a bad decision to be a bad friend, I guess, or not be a friend to Michael, and then she realizes that's just wrong. She needs to be caring to this person who might need a friend herself.
I do really enjoy how awkward she is. She's like, the only female Michael I know is the mutineer. You're not her, right?
Yeah. It was real good.
That's all great. I did find her annoying, but it's okay.
Yeah, I didn't. But
I think she was meant to be a little annoying.
Right. I think she's meant to annoy the characters for sure, and that kind of character can definitely be grating. But I like that she's so extra, I guess. I enjoy how extra she is.
Yeah, the producers were talking about they sent her on the away mission to right out of the gate. They wanted to prove to fans why she should have been on the ship and should be on the show. Essentially, they wanted her to for us to be oh, that's why she's a valued member of Starfleet. That's
funny that the writers are worried about the character being so annoying. I mean, and you need to think about a character and give everyone reasons to care about them.
Well, I mean, it's just a balancing act. If you if you do make a character, as you put it, so extra, you've got to like make them like extra good at what they do.
Yeah. I think so too.
By the way, I've been paying attention to the consoles, and I'm seeing knobs, I'm seeing toggles, I'm seeing big white buttons. I'm loving that shit.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. I don't really look for that, and I'm glad that it's appealing to you. You know, and it's true. If you make a character super extra, you have to give them extra to do. And if you make a character just super cool and like really just soulful and cool and like
they have to be super flawed.
No, I was going to say.
Oh,
I'm setting up a joke here, Dave. You're interrupting me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you make a character just super cool and smooth and really wise and knowledgeable and not so extra, they're just like laid back. They can be on the ship and do absolutely nothing, like Guinan. Just like sits back and's like the Yoda of Star Trek. She just like spools out wisdom, just doesn't do anything, doesn't need to really have a function. I know she's like running 10 forward or whatever.
Yeah, I saw her pour a drink.
She pours a drink here and there, but like that's the great thing. Like you can have a bartender character on a show basically who's just real cool. They never have to sort of function any of the plots. They just can be like laid back and be cool. Too cool for eyebrows over there.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You're joking, but no, you're right.
I know
because
it's
you look at
point.
Because look at how annoying people felt, or how annoyed people were over Neelix on Voyager. He was extra. And he didn't do anything. He tried to dispense wisdom while he stirred terrible things in a pot.
It's a great point. He wasn't cool. You got to have that character be cool.
Tell me about your troubles, Mr. Vulcan.
Yeah, like they're trying to make, if you're going to make someone the comedy relief to where they could be kind of annoying on a sort of serious sci-fi show, you have to give them like skills
with a Z.
Yeah, with a Z. And I think we've stumbled onto a bit of an archetype here that we haven't really ever, me and you at least haven't discussed before, but I'm sure it's a thing.
We haven't.
Just like the cool character that doesn't do much. And that's neat. That's a fun little archetype. I think of like Love Boat had a really cool bartender too. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other ships. I think I'm probably the reason that comes to mind is that like isn't that like a SNL skit where they have like Star Trek Love Boat or something like that?
I know. I think there was a YouTube video where they made the Next Generation opening credits like the Love Boat opening credits.
That might be what I'm thinking about. But yeah, anyway.
They're like, and Geordie LaForge as your blind engineer. That's the bit I always remember.
That's a good line. As your blind engineer. Okay, so who else we got this episode that we want to discuss? Their arcs or whatever. We got Stamets. I like Stamets a lot.
I really enjoyed Stamets. I liked him calling her a lurker. I liked how standoffish and dickish he is. He's so mean to Michael Burnham.
Yeah,
he's so mean to Lorca.
Yeah, I found myself liking Stamets from the very first episode. And I think he is a character that I think could rub you the wrong way, but he's also apparently super valuable on the crew. Although, loved when I'm spoiling something here, because we decided we were going to bring in some of our favorite quotes, but we're just talking about Stamets, and I can't do it without. I loved Lorca's quote, when he asked Saru, Stamets is upset that they're going to bring Michael Burnham on the away mission.
Absolutely.
And he says, "What's your assessment of her abilities?"
Aside from her mutiny, she is the smartest Starfleet officer I have ever known. Huh? And he knows you.
Yeah. And Lorca says, "Huh? And he knows you." I loved it so much. That was my favorite. Favorite quote of the episode right there.
That was on my list.
Well, it's probably not my favorite. My favorite's probably the more serious quote. We'll get to our favorite quotes in a minute. So yeah, loved Stamets. I feel like we didn't get to know him very well this episode, but he's just kind of the archetype of the overachieving maybe not as smart, thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, whether it's true or not, kind of guy. And I think that's a fun little archetype to play with.
Yeah. I absolutely loved how dickish he was to Michael Burnham when he's like explaining to her, biology as physics, how he's talking about they're not separate.
Oh, you still
basically acting like she's an idiot.
You still think they're separate things? Like I loved that. I loved that a lot.
Yeah.
At the subatomic level, there is no difference between biology and physics. Oh, so good. So good. And it's so exploring ideas that are on the edges of science. Like, the whole, like, string theory and shit. Like, really getting into, like, the stuff that's still mysteries to us today in science and trying to work that out. I love it.
This episode serviced the characters so well. I feel like we got so much on Michael Burnham, but we also get to see how she's a badass. She takes down those cons. That was awesome.
I actually wanted to bring up the prisoners. I thought it was cool seeing the prisoners because that's a part of Starfleet we don't get to see much. Is like a group of prisoners being transferred, and because Michael Burnham is one of them at this point, it's really interesting to see just like a group of 4 like felons or whatever they are.
Yeah,
thought that was really interesting. The fact that this universe has a seedy underbelly, which we know it does, but we don't get to see it very often.
All right, they didn't say it in the episode, but the prisoners were named Stone Cold and Psycho. Stone Cold Psycho.
That's funny. That's silly.
It is silly.
Another character we had this episode that was pretty great was Saru.
Yes.
I liked Saru. I liked Saru's defensiveness of his captain and his honestly just bitchiness toward Burnham. Like I like how logical he is in that he still knows the value of Burnham and still seems to really care about Burnham, but also is like thinks of her as the person who has wronged him more than anyone else. The balance that he struck there was interesting. But when he tells her, I promise you, I will do a better job defending my captain than you did of defending yours.
Yes.
Like that was, that hurt. That
was in my quotes, man.
Yeah, it almost made it to my quotes, but it didn't. Love that line. And I feel like the last character I really want to discuss is Lorca.
Lorca is my favorite out of the entire episode.
Yeah. I think partly because he's used so sparingly, it makes him, and he's just so intriguing and mysterious. I love him. This whole season, I really enjoy Lorca. But this episode introduces him great. He's so mysterious, always bathed in darkness. It's just a different archetype of captain than we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm all on board for that. Like, a lot of people when this episode came out, like, railed how that's not a Starfleet captain. He's not like a Starfleet captain. I kept hearing that a lot in reviews of this show. And that's all I want. I just want that sort of moral ambiguity and just different, interesting archetypes throughout the Federation. I don't want the whole Federation to be so homogenized. I
agree.
It was real cool. We had one big reveal this episode, and I feel like that's the Spore Drive. Which it was the mystery of the episode. It sort of gave Michael Burnham the driving force to, break into the mycelium room or whatever. And I just found that all very, very good. Like that reveal came at the right time because I'm super intrigued about what they will do with the Spore Drive. Like even going forward, even having seen this season, I'm excited about that. I caught a line. I didn't catch the first. I probably did, but it was over a year ago. I loved the line, "This ship can facilitate up to 300 projects at a time." It made me feel like that's this mycelium network, which is a lot of what the season is about, is one of a possible 300 projects going on this ship.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's an important one because it's one they're trying to win the war with. But what else is going on in the ship that we don't even know about?
Well, I think one of the only things we have, we have a lot of clues, actually, because you have the prisoners who bring up the black badges, because they've never seen a black badge before.
Yes.
That we know now is, well, do we want to get spoilery on later things?
No, we were trying to stick to this episode, but...
Okay.
Yeah, let's stick to this episode.
All right, so we've got black badges.
Yep, that's a clue.
We have all the stuff in Lorca's little dungeon of terror.
That didn't feel like it was multiple scientific project. That felt like his own little weird trophy room.
I don't know. There was like a friggin' half-dissected Tribble in there, man.
Yeah, there's like a Gorn skeleton or whatever. Like
a Gorn skeleton, which, by the way, the official first contact between the Federation and the Gorn was in the original series, Arena.
Right.
So that's a little bit of a continuity glitch unless you consider that either there's some sort of...
there could have been a Gorn skeleton somewhere without having first contact.
Yeah. It was like... unless there's some sort of underbelly where... or in the mirror universe, maybe they got it. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
There's definitely headcanoning ways around that. It's not an on-screen flaw. I don't even think it necessarily takes headcanoning. It's just that it could be a skeleton doesn't prove first contact. Mm-hmm. Is all. But what I'm getting at is not these little. Those are all interesting things. But like what I'm getting at is like there could be other scientific. Like other labs experimenting with other things on this ship, and I think that could be a source of future stories on this show, whether it's this season or not. The idea that there could be just all like there's 300. It's almost like you talk about exploration, and the Mycelium Network and the Spore Drive is definitely a part of exploration, like exploring even the concepts of the Spore Drive. But being able to travel the far distances and like the fact that it exists at all, it's all very interesting. But like the idea of Star Trek having a show that the ship is full of mysteries itself, and the ship is full of exploration, sort of inward into the ship, like into different parts of the ship, and that's just an interesting kind of setup for what they could do in the future. Like, what else is Discovery going to be working on if they make it through the Klingon War and we get back to kind of business as usual on Discovery? What kind of shenanigans will be going on that ship that could be leading to all kinds of cool stories?
Yeah, I suspect that was a line meant to just set up the possibilities aboard Discovery, not so much of. I'm not even sure it was like setting up like a Freak of the Week type of premise, or like a Fringe type of premise. You know what I mean? I think it's just because I think they are like really interested in just telling like a story per season for the most part.
Sure, but the idea that they have all these, it's a clever writing technique to provide just like a source of lots of stories. Mm-hmm. Like in this season, they really, I don't want to get too much into the whole season, I guess, but this season I don't think we get too much into those. But I think it's interesting because the Klingon War is the problem at hand, but it is interesting that there could be lots of other things going on the ship that we don't even know, that could be top secret above Burnham's head or whatever, especially with Lorca in charge. Who knows what kind of scientific things he's got going on. And it also said it could facilitate up to 300 projects. It doesn't necessarily mean there's 300 things happening, but it just reminds me of just like a house with many rooms, and in every one of them is a story,
Right.
I love that concept. We talked about this week, we wanted to introduce a new segment. We're going to talk about our favorite quotes from the episode.
Yep.
What you got, Dave? What's your favorite quotes from the episode?
Well, I had, if you try and, to cause trouble, basically, I intend to do a better job protecting my captain than you did yours. Saru to Michael Burnham.
Damn.
I had that one.
Bitchy Saru.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Great. I had the, aside from her mutiny, she's the smartest Starfleet officer I've ever known. And he knows you.
I had that one as well. I had This was I don't know. Is this the first time we've had shit on Star Trek? I don't know, but I loved it. I'm not trying to kill it. I'm trying to piss it off. And then she shoots the
shit that worked.
Shit that worked.
I think if you look at Generations data, that great when as the ship is flying into the surface of Veridian 3, Data just goes, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, I remember that. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I got my favorite quote. You got how many more you got?
I've got one more.
I've got one more as well, and I think it might be the same one.
It probably is.
Say it together. Universal laws
for lackeys.
Context is for kings.
Yes.
Yeah, that is Star Trek. That's Star Trek quote at its best, honestly, and it sets to me up the idea that this is a different kind of Star Trek show, and it's the kind of Star Trek show I want to see. One with moral ambiguity. I love it.
The thing that I love about that is he's not just talking to Michael Burnham. He's talking to the audience. He's talking to Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
He's saying, totally. This is the producer saying, give us a minute. There's a context here.
Interesting. You mean with canon, or you mean what? In what way do you mean that?
At the very least, I feel like they probably do mean canon as well. But I think they're talking about don't freak out and say that this is not a Starfleet captain, because there's a context here.
I see.
Jump to conclusions. Let us tell our story. And I feel like they did it subtly enough that people still freaked out and still didn't get it. But I'm sitting there watching it going shit, something's going to happen.
Well,
there's a reason for this.
Yes, it could be said that they're talking to the audience, but it's also just a thing. That is a thing that Picard would never say.
Oh, I know.
That is a thing that Kirk might say. And I think that
I don't think Kirk would say it.
You don't think that Kirk would say that?
I don't think he would say it like that. I don't think he would say it
he would,
with that. He would never have that thought. He would just be like, the ends justify the means, or maybe we've got to cheat death. I don't think he would think about it on that level. And
right. He doesn't think of himself as a king, I don't think.
Exactly.
He thinks of himself as a man doing what he has to do. I agree, he would never say it, but it is something that is very Kirk, part of the Kirk ethos to, the prime directive, you throw it out when you have to, do the right thing. And he not because he's a king, so yeah, I think that statement, universal laws are for lackeys, context is for kings, it denotes a certain, I'm a king. There's a certain gravitas, not only, gravitas in the way he's saying it, but, there's a certain self-pride, an egomaniacal nature to Lorca that quote denotes. And I don't think that Kirk had that. But Kirk definitely had the idea that he could throw out the law, the rule book when necessary.
Yeah, but I don't think Kirk thought that universal law is for lackeys either. I don't think he thought that, following the rules makes you, a lackey. You're lame if you follow the rules. I don't think Kirk ever thought that. I think it was just when your back's against the wall, sometimes it's all in Star Trek too, man. A captain has to be faced with a no-win scenario. Yeah,
that's true. That is a good point. So I don't mean to say that he would embrace that statement fully, but in a much stronger way than I would see Picard. I would say if there's a spectrum, Lorca is probably a little further out than Kirk, but closer. But Picard is a lot closer in than Kirk. Just in the following the rules versus, believing that you get to decide what the context is. There's a certain truth to it, and I think it's the way that Kirk embraced it, but there's also a certain narcissism to it as well, in believing that rules don't apply to you, and your context outweighs the universal laws. And I just love the way they set Lorca up. I just love it so much.
I do too. By the way, there was also a fun quote I forgot to put down, and I think it was Psycho said Andorians are cold in all the wrong places, and then the other guy goes The ones I killed were just cold or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. They were cold all over when I got through with them or something like that. It was really good, really good.
By the way, oh my gosh! Like I loved the bugs, the GS54 that feed on electricity and saps the shuttle's power. I love that, and that is very Doctor Who. I felt we talked about that last week.
For sure.
But the untethered pilot is a freaking nightmare. Like that, like I forgot about that, and then like she goes out to fix it, and then all of a sudden when they see her flying by, I was like, oh shit. Like that's just disgusting. That made my stomach turn.
Yeah, just the idea of being untethered in space.
Mm-hmm.
Were they at warp when that happened?
Yeah, I think so.
They were in some sort of blue mist, and I didn't know if it was some sort of electrical storm or if that was supposed to represent warp outside the windows. I really couldn't tell.
I'm not sure, but we do see that shuttle go to warp later. Which and I got a lot of these facts on Memory Alpha, so don't come at me. But this is the earliest set episode of any Trek series that features a warp-capable Starfleet shuttle.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Because the Enterprise didn't have warp-capable shuttles.
Yeah, I didn't think so, and I don't remember the original series having them. I think they did in the movies.
Okay,
or at the very least, a fast propulsion.
Right, they definitely have warp in Next Generation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any cool trivia things from this episode you want to tell us about?
They refer to Michael Burnham as Starfleet's first mutineer. And as per Memory Alpha, the statement appears to include only those convicted for mutiny and those who mutinied without some outside force influencing their minds. And it also only includes mutinies in the Federation Starfleet because the mutinies in the United Earth Starfleet had taken place, as in episodes like Enterprise, Hatchery, and Bound. So mutinies had taken place, basically.
Okay.
We just have to say it's Federation Starfleet.
Right. Were those convicted mutineers? In Enterprise? I guess we don't know for sure.
It does appear to only include convicted for mutiny.
Right. Okay, cool.
This is something I missed, and I had to go back and look at it, and I was really excited because it was one of those storylines that I was really excited about in Next Generation, and I loved the book. But during Lorca, his demonstration for Michael Burnham with the mycelial network, on one of the moons of Andoria, we see a preserver obelisk.
Interesting.
Do you remember the preserver obelisks?
Not really. I know a little bit about them, but
as you may recall, I don't know if you got this far, but in the William Shatner books, they had the book Preserver.
I read. That's where I stopped. I read about half of that book, I think.
All right, so that was a great book. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm just remembering it well because I read it when I was a kid.
Right.
But there was a bit in Next Generation where Picard was talking about the Preserver obelisks, and he was tracking. They were. I can't remember the name of the episode. I'm sorry, but they were tracking down. It was like a myth of the Preservers being this alien race that seeded the galaxy, and the Cardassians and Romulans and Vulcans and Klingons and humans all shared a common genetic trait.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they're all led to the same place and talk to this hologram of one of the Preservers, and then I think that book linked that to an episode of the original series where there was an obelisk on a planet. So anyway, I've always wanted the Preservers to be more fleshed out. I've always wanted to see more of that storyline. So I would love for that to be in the Picard series or anywhere.
That's cool. Where was the obelisk scene?
On a moon of Andoria. While Lorca is showing her all the different places you can travel in the mycelial network.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool. I was wondering if there'd be some nice hidden stuff in there. Especially, he says something about planets we've never even seen, and then it shows a planet with lots of green and stuff on it. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if that might be Borg related.
Okay.
But it was totally just a dark planet with lots of green around, lots of glowing green that you could see. Mm-hmm. And I I wonder if that's supposed to be a Borg like Easter egg, but yeah.
Well, here it says that they that the environments that can be seen include the moon of Andoria, Starbase 11, Romulus, and the Janus 6 mining facility.
That must be what the Janus 6 mining
maybe, yeah.
facilities must be what I'm thinking of.
I hadn't realized this, but upon reading this on Memory Alpha, this is just kind of fantastic that they put this much thought in. When Burnham is trying to get away from the what is it called? What is it called again? The tardigrade?
Tardigrade, yeah.
She's reciting Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And that is a great callback because in Star Trek, the animated series, Spock mentioned that Amanda loved Lewis Carroll's works. It was an episode called Once Upon a Planet. And
neat.
He noted that the Queen of Hearts is a character from Alice Through the Looking Glass, the book sequel. And I just thought that was really awesome that they included that Amanda read to her and Spock from Lewis Carroll.
That's a really fun little connection between those two worlds. Neat. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with you soon with more Star Trek Universe podcast. Peace.
Later. Live long and prosper.
Reach out to us. Hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.